Live.
Okay. It is 8 o'clock. Call the meeting of the Shenango County IDA for June 18th, 2025 to order. Maybe before we start, we'll do some introductions now.
That'd be great. So, yeah, we have a new member of the board, Lou Kalia. I'll let him talk about his background, where he's from, but I've known Lou all my life. So we're fortunate to have him on the board. He has a strong connection to Green. He's an attorney. He'll tell you in addition to that. So obviously you know who I am. I've been in this role a couple of years now, and I'm still learning. So this board is incredibly a highly functioning board. His primary engine for economic development. That's what we're trying to do. Development Shenango and the IDA. That's the goal. To try to stimulate our economy, create economic resiliency in the county. Been doing it for about 2 years, and I think we're making some progress. Thanks for joining.
I know Lou for a long time.
Yeah.
You know who I am, how we work. Thank you, Lou. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just start.
Yeah.
I've known Lou for quite some time. My previous role, RC Woodford, maybe we'll just do around the table so Lou can put some names and faces, but RC Woodford, chair.
Brian Burton, vice chair now. Right?
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
of the IDA. Mike Corey, town smart and supervisor. Nice to meet you.
Tyler Oliver, founder of Shenango. How you doing, Lou?
Thank you, sir. Jeff Blanchard. Shelley.
Tyler I'm Eric Scrivener with the city of Norwich.
Allison Knockno, Shenango County Planning Department.
Shane Butler, Shenango County Planning Department, Airport.
John Holden, IDA Board Recorder, Commerce Shenango, Office Manager.
John Axel, finance director, town Shenango.
Nice to meet you. Frank Crawford, Site Manufacturing Director up at Gary, formerly known as Sheffield's.
So the board is you guys, Lou, and Taylor's, you know. She's traveling right now from Golden Artist Colors. Lou, you want to give a little background on what you did for the last however many years since we worked together when I was a kid?
I'm Lou Kalia, practicing law for approximately 40 years. Initially, I was a clerk for Judge Ingraham right in the courthouse across the street. I was then a partner with the law firm of Hinman, Howard and Cattell. I was with Hinman, Howard and Cattell for about 8 years. Then I moved on to the Raymond Corporation, retiring as its general counsel. While at the Raymond Corporation, I was involved in Raymond's economic development activities, and in fact worked with the IDAs and several other counties as Raymond has interests outside of Shenango County as well. Also, I was an alternate to the local REDC. When our CEO could not make the meetings, I actually was his alternate to attend those meetings. As Sal said, I've been around a long time. I've also been on a number of other area not-for-profits. And I welcome the opportunity to serve, and nice to see you all this morning.
Yeah, so think about what we're trying to do is we try to connect Green to this part of the county rather than thinking they're part of Broome County. We've got a major employer down there, an international employer. We want to make sure they understand, and Lou will provide better connectivity. We have this, there's a lot of legal issues that the IDA deals with, and his expertise will be something we can rely on when we talk to attorneys and give us a perspective that we don't have right now. And honestly, his relationship with Omar Sanders from that Regional Economic Development Council, I can tell you, as I've told many of you business owners, when I call and say that Gary Bio would like to see you or Raymond would like an audience, they come. When I say the Commerce Shenango would like to talk to you, they need a directory to figure out who's who, because they're not sure, but they know who our businesses are. So thank you. I know you retired, and I know you could have just written off in the sunset. We appreciate having you very much.
Yes, absolutely. We'll roll call ourselves in.
Burton here. Corey here. Kalia here.
Crawford here.
Paul's here.
Woodford here. IDA mission statement is the mission of the Shenango County Industrial Development Agency to advance the health, prosperity, and welfare of the county citizens by helping to maintain, create, and attract businesses through appropriate investments and incentives. Approval of the minutes, May 21, 2025.
Move.
Mr. Folds moves.
Second.
Mr. Burton seconds. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Burton, aye. Corey, aye.
Crawford, aye.
Lou Kalia abstained since I wasn't at the meeting.
Paul's
Woodford, aye. Carries. Financial report, May 31, 2025. John?
Thank you. So we will start off on page 6, statement of financial position. We start off with the current assets there. The only thing there that changed a little bit is we did move a little bit of the money from the money market up into our checking account. Kind of typical behavior as, bills and things come in throughout the year. We need to do that. Investments remain steady. We do have the reduction of the land there. We had that last month, right, when we had the sale of the property, so we saw that. We will be going through the accounts payable and accounts receivable in just a minute. And our fund balance is still strong. So our net activity is negative 262. And for Lou, since you just joined, when we get into these statement activities on the other piece, you'll see that we had $190,000 loss on the sale of one of the properties that we sold. So that's primarily the driver behind that. Questions on that?
I do, John. What's the deferred inflow of resources? Can you explain that? That's the one thing that's different.
Well, that's gone now, and that was all part of the sale of the property. So we had the properties; those were going to be revenues that we had deferred to a later date that would have been coming in.
Makes sense.
We would have had to pay out some of those. We paid those out when we closed out on that business. We had to pay out those deferred revenues.
Is that property back on the tax roll now?
Say that again?
The Norwich Meadows, is that fully back on the tax roll now? Did we let Norwich know?
I don't know. Right, we can check.
Because I don't think, they're not a not-for-profit, are they? Are they a not-for-profit?
No.
George Meadow Farms, I don't think so. But we'll check with the status is of that. I'm pretty sure Steve Harris gets on top of that pretty quick, Brian, so we
Yeah,
don't
we
really.
just might want to give them a heads up.
We
let
will.
them know.
Can you take that, John, as an action item for us, please?
Yes.
So we'll follow up with Steve Harris regarding the tax. Goddess of Norwich Meadow Farms.
Was that an outright conveyance?
Say that again?
Was that an outright conveyance to Norwich Meadows?
I'm not sure if that, I'm not sure exactly how it's.
Did we deed it over to them?
Over.
Yeah, but then presumably there was a form filed.
I would, yeah, that's what.
The assessor would get in order to record the deed, there has to be a notification to the assessor, so probably the assessor.
I'm fairly confident that it was, but we'll just check. to
Yeah, we'll
make sure.
check. Well, that's been great. I haven't checked because Steve
But there-
usually, as you say,
Yeah.
once the mechanisms are triggered, he's all over the top of it.
It got missed on that property, Bainbridge, for some reason.
Say that again?
It got missed on that one
Okay.
property.
I
Bainbridge,
remember,
for
but I'll
some
find
reason.
out. I'll find out.
Who's that chicken
Oh, yes.
thing? Yeah.
Any questions on that for John?
Okay, we're on to page 7. Age receivables. We have some good news here. So we have received payment from Norwich Shenango Solar on both the 1125 that's in the 61 to 90 days and the 90-day plus. So both for 24 and the 25 pilot. Tyler helped out with that. Thank you, Tyler. We are still working with the Norbit Solar Group, trying to get that money. So we'll be talking more about that later, but we are working on that. And Tyler, do you want to give an update on the High Bridge?
They initiated the 94,000 and change payment yesterday. So we will be expecting to see that here by the end of this month.
Yeah, and we'll cover a little more of this.
Yep.
At the tail end in executive session.
Exactly.
So at least I wanted to let everybody know that they initiated the payment, so that is forthcoming.
And the question you might have is why are those numbers so big for the last two? It's because all 30 years of the leases had to be put onto the books at once. So that's why those will slowly come down over time as payments are made.
We've had a fair, Lou, just background quickly, we've had a fair amount of confusion with our pilots since I've been here. It's probably because I have had not the greatest understanding of how all the things are supposed to work. But part of it is also because these pilots or these solar fields change hands. So that's why we've got this delay right now in payment from one of these companies that John's been chasing down, because the company that now owns them wasn't here 3 times ago when the original deal was made, and they're not sure they're obligated to make this payment. So now we've got to track down the original paperwork that says, yes, you're obligated to these fees. Same things with this one we were just talking about, this high bridge wind payment. There was determination, differences on when the pilot actually began, when its taxable status changed, therefore when did they owe us. This is one of the reasons why I'd like for you to be here to help us as we start to think about these things, because we're incurring tens of thousands of dollars of legal fees before we get a payment like that. So how should we contemplate it? John has been very helpful, so the board knows, is trying to understand better how to manage our cash flow. Right, so we don't have to borrow money or go into our savings or into our, so we're getting a better handle on that now. And that $94,000 figure will really help.
Yeah, so one of the things we definitely need help on is bringing forward, making it very clear to whoever does a pilot or any kind of arrangement with us, what are the ongoing annual commitments for money?
Exactly.
So they may get an amortization schedule pilot in lieu of taxes, and they know they have to pay taxes, but these other fees kind of get lost. And they don't even make it into, well, we looked yesterday, it didn't even make it into the agreement, it was on a separate document. Now they're questioning it, so it's creating us a little bit of harm. We need to clean that stuff up. We'll need a little help with that, so we're gonna continue to pursue it. Any other questions on this page? Okay. Head on to page 8. This one is pretty routine things. There's not a lot there. It looks pretty good. Kind of our standard things that we buy every month. If there's any questions there, but the electrical work, that was put like a 3-way switch light downstairs in the room. We had kind of employees down in there, but we didn't have good lighting, good switches were needed, so we had to do a little work there. Everything else is standard kind of things. Any questions on payables? Slide into the page 9 statement of activities. A few things here I just want to bring to attention. Lou, you'll see there on year-to-date actual, that negative 192 on the year-to-date. That kind of gives you an idea of where we started there. Couple of things of note, just as we go forward, things we'll want to keep an eye on through this year is partway down, we'll see a thing on the left-hand side on the revenues called new project fees of $15,000. That's in the budget. Not sure where that's really going to end up, if we'll get some or not, just so you guys are aware. And then obviously we talked about the $94,000. That was a big part of the revenue we get, so that's important to get that. We also are all on interest income. We're trending down. If interest rates stay the same, we'll probably end up at about $35,000 for the year instead of $50,000. Because interest rates drop.
The new project fee would have been anticipating something like Payne Solar finishing or something, one of those types of projects. You would anticipate that. And
Yeah.
we haven't had one finish yet, so let's see what happens. But
You can see in the project pilot fees we got, and if you look at like the Puckett Solar is one of those big ones that had, the big things on the accounts receivable. You can see they made their payment this year because we've received that in. So that's why that'll go down by the payments we receive each year. Expenditures, contracted services was up a little bit because we had 3 payrolls in May this year. So that was part of it. And it's also the last month that we will have I think it was about $2,700 of bookkeeping services as we need the transition from the bookkeeper into myself in the role. So, I'm not saying we won't have any bookkeeping expenses between now and the end of the year, but it'll be limited. It's a pretty good handle on those things, so. That's on that page. Flipping over to page 10. Again, pretty standard. The only thing here is, when this budget was put together, I think really didn't know what the cost of the utilities were and maintenance. Kind of learned on that. They're a little bit higher than we anticipated. We do have some revenue up top where we get, the split back from Commerce and DCC, but overall our portion of it will be a little bit higher than anticipated there as well. Just want to make you guys aware of that, those pieces as well.
John, sorry, to back up to page 9.
Yep.
Kind of statement of that. Should, trust me, I'm not an account by any means, but I don't see anywhere where the purchase of this building is recorded under expenditure.
It's a 25, it was a 25.
Yeah, would have been February 25.
I'll have to go and, that would have probably ended up under, let me see how that, I wasn't here during that purchase,
No,
so
no,
let me go
find out.
find out what the accounting was. It's in the assets, I'm sure. The
Yeah.
question is where. So let me go find out where that is on the balance sheets for you.
Okay,
And if it had any kind of revenue expense.
it seems like it.
We closed in the late October of 2024.
Oh,
Which
was it?
means we moved in early winter of
We paid
2025.
the-
Everybody paid it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
we'll explain that.
Because-
Oh,
Thanks.
there you go, Tom, thanks. We closed on it in October.
Yeah.
It seems like we've had this building for like a month.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, geez.
Good question, though. And again, we welcome all questions. I hope you guys realize that, so please ask questions.
Yeah, no,
We're here
that's
for
good.
answer your
Thank you.
questions.
So I actually need young people to remember things.
Yeah. Memory time.
It was an assist from John Holden here, so.
So just so everyone realizes, when I took a look at the way the budget was constructed, it was really only 2 months that the budget was constructed to actually make money. And that was in January, when we get all those project fees in, and in like June, when we get the 94,000 from hybrid. Other than that, the budget is really loses money every month. So you can see we try to break even by the end of the year. Right now, that's not trending good. Some of it we know why, because we sold the building at a loss, but other things like the interest and those pilot fees and other things, we'll have to see how they go in the high bridge payment, so we get that. So we'll keep you updated. We'll kind of give you some projections going forward, but
And we'll work with RC and the finance
Yeah.
committee, because in reality, that's what those project fees and that's what those funds come in for, because otherwise, that's why Brian has explained, the idea was going to go bankrupt if we didn't have some of these pilots come along.
So
So
when we say we sold North Meadows at a loss, is that based upon the assessed value of what we sold? Because it didn't cost us anything to get it.
what the value of what it was on the books would be, I say.
Right, so the depreciation value as far as the accounting goes.
yes,
When we had it as an asset, it was valued at $400,000. When we sold it for 208, and now we
Got
have
it.
it.
So it's just an accounting practice.
Same thing's gonna happen with the cottage bakery and so on and so forth.
Just to clear up any misconception, we did not take a loss on that property.
How much? How much? There's an accounting treatment for it, right, that has to show.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
We're gonna show this, for those of you on the DCC board, we're gonna show some significant write-offs when we close on that hotel and then the cottage bakery. Significant. So it'll be the same type of, one of those will be a real loss, but it'll be the same type of thing.
Good.
Any other questions for John with the financials?
Thanks, John.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Mr. Burton moves.
Corey, second.
Mr. Corey seconds. Discussion. We'll vote.
Bert and I.
Corey, aye.
Kalia, aye. Crawford, aye.
Bullseye.
Gifford, aye. Carries.
John's done a really good job since he's been a great addition.
Sure.
More help, more financial acumen. He's been a great addition.
Bills and invoices, John?
What's that?
First page,
Page 2.
page 2,
Back to the other question.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, a lot of these you guys, we had talked a little bit about there. MBT insurance, that's just kind of our insurance here for public officers. That we have to do every year for our umbrella coverage, as you guys know, so we are protected here, so that's one you probably want to be aware of. We do pay a little bit, we pay some of the tax down the bills in Bainbridge there, on the property there. And the rest is just kind of normal expenditures, some of them you guys have seen. NICEAG bills obviously been running a little higher than previous years, so this is something we'll deal with.
Yeah, can you guys turn off the light once in a while?
I can't turn some of them on.
You really
Can't. Just so you guys don't know, I have started to
They're on all the
break out on the budget. I have broken out the gas from the electric. It used to be lumped into one number. I'm breaking that out separate so we can understand what does it cost us to run electric versus what it costs us to heat. So that will be something we'll keep an eye on, just so you guys know.
Thanks.
We LED here.
So I guess,
LED lights everywhere.
I'm not sure, Stan.
They don't.
But the good news is, guys, the grant to put this project together is $1 million. So we have probably, we think to do the entire building is about $1.4 million. So when we start to think about these upgrades, you're gonna hear me talk about when we get to the compressor situation out here, what I think we should do. But there's an opportunity to make some of those changes. Hopefully, energy efficiency will be one of the things we try to employ. Exactly. And NICEAG was unwilling, John Holden reached out, and that NICEAG come in and help us. They won't do that until you've been in the building for 6 months. So you have to be
1 year.
1 year.
1 year.
Thank you. you have to establish a pattern, and then they'll come in out. Okay, got it. So, but we'll try to figure it all out as best we can.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the bills and invoices.
Corey moves.
Mr. Corey moves.
Second.
Mr. Folds seconds, discussion. Your vote.
Burton, aye. Corey, aye.
Kalia, aye.
Crawford, aye.
Bullseye.
Woodford, aye, carries. Pilot updates.
Okay, the first one here on the docket is the Lifelong Agriculture LLC. We have talked about this a couple months. This is the cannabis cultivation site up in Sherburne. We're looking to purchase the Purdy Meat Market building up there. We had showed a little bit of hesitancy here when they first came in, just based on the nature of the project. Our attorneys have kind of guided me on how to move forward with that. I have asked for additional information from the applicant, which we have received. He's got some history doing this in several different states. And I did receive he showed proof that he has applied for a license from the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. So I have some of those documents lined up. So I guess I'm more or less looking for some sort of guidance on how we want to move forward with this one. I'm happy to do, the cost benefit analysis and all that stuff for this project if we think that it'd be a feasible one to do, or kind of, I guess, have a discussion on it. He the last month was a little frustrated with the length of the process here and was going to start looking at some different sites in neighboring states. He has since come back and said, no, I actually really like that Sherburne site. What do we need to do? So he is a little anxious, but again, just the nature of the project is a little bit different. Our attorneys have found other IDAs, or I should say one IDA in New York State who has approved a similar project, but that was for a very large scale cannabis manufacturer.
I don't have a problem with the project. My concern was we had very incomplete application.
Yes.
That was not filled out professionally or completely. So, if we had a completed application, I personally am fine with moving forward with it. But, we can't go down the road of accepting incomplete applications again. So
Right.
if they get us a completed application, I'm fine with moving forward.
And I have since gotten the additional information that was somewhat missing in there. And again, I just asked for some follow-up documents just to show, some legitimacy here.
And it's agriculture.
We were concerned with the process, not the project.
So what I will plan to do is come back next month or our next meeting with some numbers, and I will ask him to clean up the application a little bit, just because I agree with you, it wasn't professionally done, and we'll go from there.
Great.
And I'll include some of that supporting documentation as well that they've provided since then.
I just didn't want to do more work if the board's not going to consider it.
Yeah.
Is there anybody here now? for anything?
I was gonna say,
That's the question.
kind of a straw poll. Is there anybody that's philosophically opposed to supporting an application or advancing an application?
You could put me in that camp, or see.
I have some reservations, but it's a legal product. It's got it's state sanctioned. So you gotta look at it from, I guess, maybe not emotional, but your values, sometimes it makes you wonder just what it does for the image of the IDA. So at least let's make sure everything is done correctly when we make a decision. So I agree with Brian.
No, I appreciate Lou voicing opposition. It's not unreasonable to do so, and quite frankly, there's some projects that this IDA has entertained that I'm not entirely supportive of. And,
I think those are why the idea exists, to have those exact discussions.
exactly. Yep. So no, we'll
Keep going.
So we'll move forward and
Move
at least
forward and see
entertain
if
the
it's
application, and we'll go from there. Okay, that sounds good. Appreciate that. Moving on down the list here, Norbert Solar Farms. We are still waiting to, they're trying to clean up the closing documents for both parties to agree there. So not much of an update from last month. Similar to Payne Solar, they're still working with NYSEG on their interconnection details and price tag. So not much of an update there either, unfortunately. And the last one here, Principal Holding Group, closing documents have been done. Both parties have those. Again, they're just reviewing those documents to ensure everything looks good. So we're still waiting to close there.
Yeah, and for Lou's benefit, Norbit is located on Upper Ravine Road, town of Norwich. Payne Solar is the end of County Road 38 and Route 7 in the town and village of Bainbridge. It's the former Elmer's site. And Principal Holdings Group is the hotel downtown. Anything further with the pilots, Tyler?
That's it.
Okay.
I got a question for a project that started and seems to stop abruptly. We had a 3 megawatt solar project just north of Smyrna on Route 22. It's changed hands a number of times, so I'm not exactly sure what the name of it is now, but we last left off with them. There's a correspondence going back and forth on what we consider a decommission plan. And have we heard anything from them since? They are building and they are improving all the time. There's a road that goes up there. You can see the brackets that are going to be holding the solar panels. The town of Smyrna hasn't heard anything, but I think eventually they would come back to us if we go ahead
Yeah, and I
tax them accordingly like any other project.
right, I mean, the application exists. I have had no correspondence with them since I've started here last September.
They've not come back since whatever the last correspondence was with Jenna, where we met as a group to say, you guys, Smyrna, wanted a more stringent decommission plan.
But we just wanted one that
We were going
was
through
a
the
little
whole
more
UTEP
detailed than what they said.
Right, we were going through the whole UTEP process. We had just adopted our process where we did have a decommissioning process. They didn't know if they could adhere to it. We wanted to know, can you do it? What's your plan? That was it.
Well, they did say we could do it, but I think the
But that
board
was
was
it.
unhappy with it, just the way it was detailed. It was very general, nothing specific, and
They weren't putting a value on their bond, right?
no.
Is what the holdup was. They weren't giving us any sort of value on their decommissioning.
Yeah, I think how much they were going to put it, because you also have to look at the duration of the project, what is it, how long it's going. We weren't getting any information.
We make them post a bond, Brian. They gotta
Yeah.
post a bond based on the kilowatt, the number of panels, blah, blah, blah.
And they were pledging, if I remember correctly, they were pledging a bond. However, they weren't valuing it.
It didn't have
It
a,
didn't have any bonding dollar amount in there, nothing. So
there was also an issue with actually the layout, the plot plan itself.
there was some
That put a hold on it, but that's,
gas or something.
yeah, they actually had modified and changed that. I don't even think another seeker was required for that. It was kind of like a hiccup, but they're moving along, so I want to let our assessor know in the town.
Sounds like a taxation.
And we haven't, well, right, our assessor needs to know if we've been contacted, so
I
that's
have no problem.
my
So
reason for it. All right,
the
if
value
I
of
hear
that
anything, I'll let
property is
the board
going
know.
up.
Okay, moving on, new business. Sal.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about Tyler Restore New York, what we were trying to do there. And this is something that we've contemplated it. I'm not sure. We met yesterday as a group. The consolidated funding application is open. And we're trying to figure out between Shane, Eric Scribner, Tyler, and what grants do we want to pursue with what we've already got going on? Shane and his team have some opportunities they're pursuing with Boyd Park, and some more infrastructure grant. There's one that we want to pursue collectively that tries to access the waterway. One of the ones that I'm trying to figure out how to pursue in addition to that is the Restore New York grants and the New York Forward grants potentially. All of those grants require your communities to be pro-housing communities. So I keep bringing up, it doesn't really have to be this Restore New York grant. We need the municipalities to become certified as pro-housing communities. And we only have 5 that are on that path right now. One is Oxford, completely certified. Norwich, Smithville Flats, New Berlin, I can't remember the other one.
Village of New Berlin
Village of New Berlin.
and the
So-
town of
so-
North Norwich.
To pursue these grants, you need to file a letter of intent, and then you need to work with us. We'll help you with Isaiah Sutton. Put all the documentation together that you need. It's not a hard process to become pro-housing certified. And I'm encouraging the board, the county board, Jeff, if you could help us, Mike, the more of the communities that are, I think North Norwich filed their letter of intent too. If we want to go after these grants that have anything to do with housing or downtown revitalizations, we need to be pro-housing communities. And most of the other counties we're competing with are far ahead of us when they go after and pursue these grant opportunities.
What you said, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I was just gonna ask something, do we know what the resistance is?
It's just because there's a process involved where you have to, a pro housing community, I'm gonna be too simplistic, and Shane, please help me when I say this wrong. But all you really have to do is show that you're allowing housing in your community, that you're not restricting people from building or buying houses in your community. So you have to document your building permits, right? That's basically it. You have to document, and a lot of our smaller municipalities don't have that record keeping yet. So if you don't, there's a process. We can help. There's actually a woman who has a weekly meeting on this process, a Teams meeting that Tyler plugs in on. So all we have to do is get our mayors, our town supervisors to just plug in on it, and we'll help. We get it, we'll help.
And there's ongoing reporting.
Yes.
It's just one more.
Another thing for somebody, and I've had that conversation with my clerk because of the ongoing stuff.
It's one
Who's
more
gonna do
thing.
all this, you know,
One more
who's gonna
thing.
take care of it, and who's gonna be responsible for it? I mean, I got all the information from Isaiah, just the other day, he sent me everything that the town needed to go forward with us doing everything else.
I want you guys all to understand, because I work for the board, we work for the boards, right? But at the end of the day, I had this conversation, I had Frank here with a bunch of CEOs last night, and we get this accusation of being Norwich centric. But if literally, because they have other resources that allow them to be certified, well then by definition, Omar and the state, Commerce Shenango, the IDA are gonna focus on those areas where you can make a difference. And I don't want that, because we have to think about this collectively, from Sherburne to Green, from, New Berlin to Acton. We have to think about those things. And this is why we have at least 5 more incredibly walkable downtowns. Green, Bainbridge, Acton, no, not Acton, New Berlin, Sherburne, Oxford. So Sherburne and Green, Oxford, New Berlin and Bainbridge, all very active mayors, all very much, I think, progressive thinking about how to get things done from a business perspective. We talked yesterday about pursuing New York Forward grant, right? Like a $4.5 million grant that we go mini DRI. Shane's suggestion was might not be ready for that, might better off put together a plan to say, what would that look like before you start to go pursue the grant to actually do it? Put together a strategic plan for each of those municipalities. So now I whittle it back down and say, maybe we should just focus on right now a couple, so that we really could put together a strong plan for them to be able to actually execute one of those 4.5. Maybe we should focus on Sherburne and Green. Neither one of those are pro-housing communities. Neither one of those have filed a letter of intent to get them. So I'm not gonna do that, because there's no sense in putting those efforts together or spending taxpayer dollars to study what would that look like. So this is all, I'm just trying to emphasize. We wanna go after these things, and they're available, and we can get them. And the state wants to invest, and Shane will attest to this, they want to invest where they've already invested. Tangential projects that are related to the ones we've already started. So if we want to do that countywide, we'll have to have these municipalities become. And I don't know what to do, Jeff, to help with that, but I'll help. Kyler's made the presentation. Since he's made that presentation, we've had 2 different developers come from outside this area trying to find properties to invest, right, in Norwich, because they're pro-housing. They're on that path. They've toured the Cole Drive. They would love to go see the Chobani plant over there. They want to talk about housing potentially in Green. They're not a New York Forward. So they said, okay, I'll come back up there. They want to put 72 units behind 1244. Barron's in right there. They know that. They know the Harringtons really well. This developer's part of the project. It's developing at Davis College, so he's legit. Met with Omar last week. That's the one they'd like to do. 72 workforce housing condos, single family for workers at Raymond. He's done his work. He knows it would work. Omar loves the project, right? Talked about infrastructure grants potentially. Not a pro-housing community. The guy literally pivots right back up here and says, can you get a hold of Al Linnendale on Cole Drive? Because I'd like to talk there. Because he knows he needs to get grants to make it work. I'll stop. I'm off my horse on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Sal on Restore? Old business?
Yeah, quickly, the revised mission statement. I know RCU asked some questions. Taylor brought it up. We've included that again. It's on page. Dan did a really good job of taking that. Page 11. our original, John ran this through AI, try to show you some of the real questions we had, was that Taylor asked that there was no specific mention of solar projects in our proposed mission statement. And honestly, I'm okay with that, because in my opinion, there's no specific mention of housing, but we know we're gonna work on those things. In my opinion,
It does say housing.
it does say housing. Oh, yeah, thank you. So again, when RC and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, when we talk about saying attracting investment, those are solar projects, because we're open for that. When we talk about providing financial incentives, it's supposedly supporting job creation, that's what these things, business expansion, housing development, community revitalization. Do we want to say solar projects in there? Because there's nothing in there that does.
I think, so I've seen people on social media aimed at, when they get to talk, what's it called?
Public hearings?
Public hearings state that, why are you even talking about this?
It's not part of your mission.
So it has been brought up that we do not mention green energy products in our mission statement. And then they fall back on, well, you say job creation, these aren't creating jobs. So I think it could combat a lot of that if we did put it in there specifically, because we're not getting necessarily these other items out of those projects. Just my opinion.
Yeah, and when it was brought up before, Taylor, I believe, made a very valid point. One thing we have heard is that, and this is your colleague from Herkimer County, that if you're gonna undertake some kind of activity, you should be able to point to your mission statement and say, here it is. I mean, it somehow should be called out. So if we're going to look at energy projects, probably energy should be somewhere itemized in that mission.
Makes sense.
As Brian said, philosophically, energy projects are one that I sometimes struggle with, because they don't create jobs. And some folks are somewhat opposed to solar specifically because, sometimes it can have a negative impact on agricultural property, et cetera, et cetera. But, if we are going to entertain these, and for Lou's benefit, if you look at the statement of activities that John was talking about, you look at our pilot and project fees, the vast majority are energy projects. So that has been kind of our meat and potatoes the last few years. And I don't think we need to labor over it, but maybe just one of those bullet points should be energy.
We'll take this back, RC, and we'll add something about assessing, clean energy solutions in Shenango County, right? Doesn't have to be solar specific.
Or something about conserving natural resources.
Say that again?
Or something like conserving natural resources, so maybe how things can fall in that bucket down the road too.
As I did with this one, I'll look north and south, I'll find other IDAs and see exactly what I'll come back with a recommendation by the next board meeting. We take that as an action item for me, John Holden,
Yes, sir.
to revise this one more time.
I could just add something. Smyrna has over 37 operating natural gas wells. So to specifically target solar is, I think, I don't think it's going to be germane as when it comes to creating jobs. You could use, it's all it's wordplay when you get into something like this. You're trying to satisfy, the audience that's reading these things. And you could say clean and affordable energy, and that would if you use a term like that, now natural gas, which powers so many manufacturing facilities, becomes pretty much first and foremost. I think there's certainly a debate that could be made that solar and wind is expensive, it's subsidized, and it's not what they need so much, which is consistent. Manufacturers need that. So anyway, if you want to satisfy that side of the debate, I would say clean and affordable would probably cover everything. Just my opinion.
We'll get the right statement in there. I agree.
Good. Nope, sounds good. Water district.
Say that again?
Water district.
Yes, we're gonna pursue that. Lou, for your background, for the rest of the IDA board, we have another meeting today at 9 o'clock regarding a group for North Norwich, and the city of Norwich, discussing the potential for a water district, a new one that would run on both sides of the river from the halfway bridge to the Bosse's Bridge and would bracket the river. Group of people met several times to try to figure out what would that look like if we were to really build and expand out in those areas that would have potential development. We met yesterday again with part of that group to pursue those grants. The county has given us some money to help us go after some of these types of things. And we're going to hire a consultant to help us pursue a grant, to do a feasibility study on that water district. And we're also, I haven't asked Jeff, haven't come back, but we're also going to hire some consultants to help us figure out what areas along that water district would be the most ripe for potential residential development or commercial development, which would help guide where the water district should start, because you're never going to be able to do it all at one time. So those are the two things that we're going to pursue. RC from our Tyler will be the one working with consultants to drive those two activities via the IDA.
And I believe today we'll have, in addition to folks from the city, the towns, we'll also have Eric, I think today is the city's engineer, Delaware engineer.
Yeah, they're gonna try to zoom in. I gotta confirm with Derek, but he's gonna try to do that.
The city's engineering consultants have been to work for the city for several decades, and they know a lot about the infrastructure that's here. And they certainly are familiar with the area, and the towns just will have to kind of come down to prioritize what areas to concentrate on. Because as Al said, it's to go from the halfway house bridge to North Norwich would be a very huge undertaking. So, more to follow.
Any questions about that water district? The IDA being the lead agency, so far the work has been very cooperative. Tyler went to the town of North Norwich board last night. How did that go, Ty? Talk about that.
Good.
They were receptive to the concept.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Sal?
Yes, so normally I would give a little bit of an update, but for now, what we would like to do, and again, background, Lou, we have many of our municipalities that have what I would call nuisance properties that are currently in good tax status, but look like the bodega across the street or the Bluebird. It's uninhabitable, even though it's in tax status, got running sewer. Nobody knows what to do with those properties because they don't know how to detect them. No municipalities want to own those properties because of the liability it creates. We've been searching for an answer, considering things like land banks and everything else that are a long process to set up. We don't have a land bank in Chenango County. I believe we should. Eventually, we'll go down that. But we currently, while we're trying to create a more appropriate structure to deal with these things, have challenges we need to deal with. You can't really revitalize these downtowns and deal with some of these challenges if you don't clean up some of these nuisance properties. Don't know how to revitalize Westcott Street if I don't figure out how to deal with 12, the greenhouse down from my parents, right? So I met Steve Mayer at an economic development conference who works with Harris Beach Murda, and he introduced us to another attorney, Joe, who's going to talk more today when I stop talking. And they are actually the attorneys for several different municipalities in Onondaga County, and there is a process to do this. I went to PED and told them that the IDA was going to figure this out, and then we would teach and show them, the people that know how to do it, the test case across the street, and Sue McIntyre and others, Phil Wade from the other, said, please go learn how to do that. We would love to, because nobody has attorneys. We're not, and again, I don't know that our attorneys, Stephanie Hanrahan is not equipped to be able to do these types of things. So we need some experts that know how to do it. These guys are going to talk to you about what that process will look like. And then I'm going to ask at the end that when we go into executive session, we consider entering into an agreement with them, a letter of intent, just to engage their services. All right, Joe, Steve, whoever wants to go first.
I'll kick it off. I know we're up against a hard stop here. I think it sounds like you guys have a meeting at 9, so I want to at least introduce myself and introduce maybe some possible strategies to to fix these issues that you're dealing with down there. It's a common issue that a lot of my towns, villages, and the county here are also dealing with. So it's not uncommon. It's a very common problem across New York State. My name is Joe Protesky. I'm a municipal attorney. I handle municipal issues I'm special counsel of the county legislature here in Onondaga County. I'm the town and village attorney at over 10 towns and villages here in Onondaga County. So literally from 8 o'clock in the morning till probably 10 to 11 at night, I'm dealing with some municipal issue in some way, shape, or form. I do have Steve, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself too. Steve's more of our economic development specialist, but go ahead, Steve, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So yeah, Sal and I met formally at the ET conference a couple weeks ago. Had a good discussion about some of the issues you guys are facing. My practice largely hinges around representation of IDAs. In some way, shape, or form, I represent about 15 IDAs throughout New York State. I'm all over. I'm, Genesee County. It's about as far west as I go. I do a lot in the southern tier, some in the north country. So I got my kind of hands in a lot of different pots around New York State, which I think can help in some instances because I hear you guys talking about, potential amendments to policies or mission statements and so forth. So, just the luxury of having, us representing a bunch of different IDAs and so forth. And in these instances, there's really nothing that we haven't seen at this point. But on the nuisance issue, and this is why I wanted to pull Joe in, and Sal and I talked about this before. Joe's got extensive experience in municipal law, and he's kind of the go-to expert on dealing with this. And like you just said, this is something that he sees, all the time. So he's able to provide, some great guidance and, steer you guys in the right direction potentially.
So thanks, Steve. I'm going to present two possible strategies for dealing with this issue. This is by no means the only two methods for doing it, but it's two methods that I've employed in the past. This is also geared more towards cities because I believe some of the initial problems are in the city of Norwich, but there are comparable sections of law under town and village law that would also apply to towns and villages. So you could seek a similar strategy under those sections of law too. If at any point anybody has questions, can everybody see my screen and the presentation okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. If there's any questions at any point, I can't see you guys because my screen's got the slides up, but just stop, just say something. I'm happy to answer any questions in the middle of this. Like I said, I'm going to try to be brief and go quick, but this is just meant to introduce some strategies that you may employ. And once again, these are not exclusive strategies. There may be others that we can come up with, but these are two that I have experience with. So strategy number one would be enacting a cleanup local law. And this would be pursuant to New York General City Law. Also, I should know, if anybody wants a copy of this presentation, I can send it to Sal afterwards. You guys have a copy and can review it on your own time as well. But pursuant to New York General City Law, Section 2035, cities have the following powers. This is a power I've utilized in the past: to adopt a local law or ordinance compelling the repair or removal of any building or structure that, for any cause, endangers the health, safety, or welfare of the public, providing as follows. And then there's some steps that the local law needs to have within it, and then we would oversee the process to make sure those steps are followed. There would have to be an inspection or report by the director of buildings of the city. A lot of cities designate the code enforcement officer or the director of planning as the director of buildings, so that would be something we could work on in the local law to make sure that's taken care of. For the service of a notice upon the owner and all persons having interest in such property or structure, either personally or by registered mail. And then the notice has to contain certain things: description of the premises, an order of the director of buildings requiring something to be repaired or removed. If the service is done by registered mail, posting has to be on the actual property. The notice itself also must provide for the time within which the owner served has to commence the repair or removal of the structure. You've got to file the notice with the county clerk. The notice also has to have a notice of hearing. The property owner, we have due process in New York State, in the United States, so they are entitled to some sort of due process before the city, where the municipality goes and cleans up or demolishes the property. So the notice has to have some time, place, and location for the hearing. the director of buildings would then have a hearing before him and or her and would consider whether the building is unsafe. The law also has to say that if the director of buildings finds that the structure is unsafe and repair or removal is necessary, that he could then assess those charges against the property itself, and they would actually become a tax levy on the property. So that's at a high level one strategy for doing this. There would be some steps involved in enacting the strategy. We'd have to, if we're going to use City of Norwich as a test case, we have to look at their local laws, see what they have on the books already with regard to unsafe structures, and what removal process or repair process they have, what type of property maintenance laws they have. And then we have to, depending on what they have, we have to actually probably amend their law to bring it in line with what general city law says. We can't have a local law. The city can't have a local law that conflicts generally with state law. So there has to be some analysis done at the local law level first to just see what changes need to be made to the city law. We have to work with the codes officer and possibly the police department, city engineer, fire department to build a record and do a report as to why the buildings are structurally unsafe or endanger the public health, safety, and welfare of the public. We would help and assist in drafting and filing that requisite notice that was mentioned under the law. And then we would oversee the hearing, and we make sure that the building officer in this case, or the code enforcement officer, has sufficient basis to find that the building is unsafe. If he does and demolition or repair is ordered, we would then work with the assessor. We could work with the city itself to bid out the project if we needed to for the demo work. But once the work's been completed, we work with the assessor to make sure all those costs, and also those costs include our legal fees too. Our legal fees can actually be assessed against the property and also be part of the tax budget. So we work with the assessor to assess the charges and make sure that they're put on the tax rolls against the property. And then if necessary, we can also assist with the, assuming these cleanup costs don't get paid as part of the taxes, we can assist with the in-rem foreclosure process too, and actually acquiring the properties through a tax foreclosure process. Any questions at all yet on this?
No, but I will tell you, in my opinion, that would be a very difficult pot for the city to enact. So I'm interested in number two. I hope there's another process because honestly, I know we are bound on time and we can go through the pros and the cons, but I'd ask if you could send this to us because I can tell you, and Eric, you can speak freely if you'd like to, or anybody else that's used to dealing with the city, that process is not going to happen in any near term. So that I would not suggest to this board we incur any expense trying to teach the city or any other municipality how to do that. That would take us.
And I'll just add to that, that's because that process is very personnel heavy,
Yes.
Where the city would have to be really involved and have things like
A
codes inspector and,
buildings director.
yeah.
So on and so forth. So
And that's part of the biggest problem we have right now is not having the personnel infrastructure to actually follow through with all this stuff. And please correct me if I'm wrong here. Just from listening to the common council meetings, that's what I'm gathering.
So there's no other con you could give me other than we can't do that.
Okay. Then I will move to the next strategy. So the next strategy would be essentially Supreme Court litigation, and this would be pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 78B. The only input we would need from the city is essentially an authorization to file a lawsuit in Supreme Court. We would forego city court and, pursuant to this section of law, we would bring a special proceeding in Supreme Court and we would ask for a judicial order to, essentially demolish or repair or essentially to demolish the structure. And those costs that are associated with it, including our legal fees, would be included in a money judgment against the property owner. So,
But it is demolish or repair, correct?
So under this section of law, this is essentially demolished. There may be, once again, these are not the exclusive remedies for doing this, and I'd have to look at the city law itself to see if it's more expansive to allow us to actually include repair costs too. I haven't gotten in the weeds with the city law, because we haven't been retained, number one, and number two, that's gonna be a little bit more of a complex process. So state law says demo. The city law may allow us to also recoup repair costs as well and order repair. I'd have to look at the city code, and the city would be allowed to do that pursuant to their municipal home rule powers. So, that would be essentially strategy 2.
What's the gravamen of the complaint on this? Is that there's a pile of building code violation that then allows you to run into state Supreme Court?
Yeah, essentially, we'd have to build a record showing that the property is unsafe, it's a threat to the public health, safety, welfare. Code violations would be certainly one indication of that. An engineer's report would be another indication of that. Police reports would be another indication of that. Fire department reports would be another indication of that. So there's a lot of ways to establish that. We would need to work with, once again, we would still need to work with city personnel to establish a record, but code violations would certainly be the best indicator, but engineer reports, code reports, and also fire department reports would be.
We would have those. This seems correct, Eric, on those buildings we're talking about?
Yep.
We would have grounds for that, yes?
I would think so, yeah. Depending on what level, I mean, I know there is.
Rather want the level.
Of the properties, so.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so in order to actually commence this strategy 2, we would need, these are what we prefer to have, some sort of structural report from the municipal engineer, codes report from code enforcement officers specifying violations, police reports specifying any criminal violations on the property. And then the city council would need to just file, or would need to pass a resolution authorizing us to bring the action.
It seems much more feasible. Makes sense. Is this doable for us in the city of Norwich, town of New Berlin, places like that, Smyrna?
I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, going into state Supreme Court, it's the most formal trial court in the state of, New York. And obviously, the building owner is gonna hire a lawyer. This is not easy pass, right? This is a lawsuit which can involve, a lot of what's called discovery, which is, exchange of information prior to the time it gets to trial. So this isn't like an eviction, where it can get over in 30 or 60 days. This is gonna drag out. I mean, this is real deal, litigation. I'm not besmirching Harris Beach. I'm sure they have the litigation chops. But the landlord is gonna, the owner is gonna hire a lawyer, and you're just gonna bog down. So is it feasible? Yes, but it's not snap of the fingers.
It's not a punch your ticket.
No, this is gonna be a long, drawn-out process, because everybody's gonna resist it. I know you said you don't want to see buildings demolished, but let's assume it is doomsday. These guys are gonna fight tooth and nail for having their building, demolished, and then ultimately you're gonna have a trial before, I don't know if it's probably a judge, probably a non-jury trial, about, whether the case has been established.
So Joe and Steve, I think we're gonna need more time to have this conversation, and I apologize. An hour is not enough to fill our, even when we have a big full agenda, I see that I thought I could do it all. But I'm going to, I'll come back to you guys and we'll figure out how to engage you, and I've done these twice now. I don't need any approvals to hire services, so we'll come back and be appropriate with you guys. But I want you to come back and I'll get some time on our next meeting, where we'll put an extension here. We won't back a meeting up against that. And we'll have you come in. We can have more of a conversation around this to talk how long, because maybe in that point, Joe, you could give us some examples where you've done it and walk us through the length of time, the cost incurred from beginning to end. That would help us with some perspective and help us guide our municipalities as we try to advise them. Is that okay? Is that okay with you guys?
Happy to, and I'll get some clarification too on whether repair costs can be included as part of this litigation. I apologize for not having that with me today, but I'll look at the city code itself and see if we can recoup those those costs as part of this as well.
No problem, no apologies, we're learning here, so yeah, if you could figure out that time, whether repair is possible, or if it's only demolished, what that process would be, I'll get you on the calendar for the next meeting, John, we'll extend our meeting, and we'll make sure that we carve out at the beginning of the meeting enough time for you to walk us through this process.
Definitely
All right,
worth
sounds
further, yeah, definitely worth further investigation.
Thank you both.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Yep.
Appreciate it.
Take care, everyone. It's nice meeting you.
You too, thank you.
Thank you.
We do need to go into executive session quickly to talk about the hybrid situation on our CIP, correct? So we do need a motion to go into.
Are you guys gonna make any, decisions in your executive session? Any voting
When we go out, there'll be no more.
after? Yep.
So I'll make a motion to go into executive session to talk about contract negotiations. And, we do not expect to take action upon coming out of executive session.
So therefore, you'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting as well, right? Go into executive session and adjourn once we come out, correct?
So we actually adjourn after.
After, okay, gotcha, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Burton moves,
Court second.
20 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're in executive session.
Let me end the stream.
Hold on one second.
There we,